This diagram shows how we set up emitter coverage to create the best wet spot around our root ball for our plants. And if we're doing a grouping of plants, what you can see here is these red areas are the root ball and the green area is the wet spot we're creating. So the way we do it is we set up 3 different emitters on the perimeter of the root ball. You got to remember that when the plant is new, you've got to provide water to that existing root ball. I've seen people put 1 emitter, which is very common to save money. They'll put it on one side of the root ball. I've seen this side of the plant die because it wasn't getting any water. You have to put multiple emitters around your plants, even if it's a 1-gallon container, and anticipate where the roots are going to grow to. The roots are going to push off into this wet spot, and that's what you want. That's how you get your plant to enlarge and mature. So what you want to do is anticipate that and create a large wet spot around the entire perimeter. Even this has its limitations. This, depending on how big of a plant you're dealing with, if you get a plant that's 5-6 feet across, there's no way you're going to get a wet spot to spread out this much. But this strategy is very effective in planting areas that are anywhere from 12 inches wide to 4 feet wide. And if you imagine this being about 4 feet from this edge to this edge, then that's a way that you can plant and use this kind of colonizing effect where you link together the wet spots from one plant to the next. We use this a lot around houses, around fencing, and narrow planting beds. This is a very effective way to do it, but the most important thing for you to understand is putting multiple emitters to spread out the soak zone for the roots. This shows where you have plants that are spread out more, the problem you're going to run into. Like you saw in the other video, this becomes a dry area, and that dry soil also robs a lot of this water that you think your plant's getting from the plant. The super dry edge along here will wick the water away and it won't be available to the plant itself. So when you have this situation, one of the things you need to remember is that if you think you're giving that plant 2 gallons of water per cycle, it's really only going to get about 3/4 of what you think you're giving it, because this dry perimeter is going to hold on to the rest and not make it available to the plant. So that's emitter layout. You can see here where the issue is that if you have that much dry area, when the plant moves its roots into that zone during the winter rains and then summer comes, this is going to be very dry, and that's all the plant has to work with is that wet zone. I use 2-gallon per hour emitters only. I don't use 1-gallon per hour emitters, and the reason is this. I like to see that emitter is creating a puddle like you see here. The reason being is I'm trying to get that water to spread out. Obviously I want it to penetrate, but I'm going to have surface roots no matter what, and I need some of those surface roots to get moisture to them, because most of the feeding is occurring at the top 6 or 8 inches where the nutrients in the soil are. So you need a water source to give the plant access for its roots to grab that. That said, the bigger I can make this wet spot, the more coverage those roots are going to have. We've got to remember that in the winter and the fall, when it's raining, those roots are going to spread out beyond your wet spot anyway. So what we're trying to do is give them a good reach with our irrigation system that's sustainable as the plant matures. So when I have a planting like this that's quite dense, what I will do is I'll actually have these share the overlap. So you've got the root ball for this plant is going to spread into this area, and this plant's going to spread in here. So I put these emitters in between these plants so that they're sharing the wet spot in between. And you see that little flow? I know it's called drip irrigation, but these are 2-gallon per hour emitters, and what they actually do is create a little stream of water. That's good. That allows this water to puddle and spread out. Now, this particular area has a lot of sand in it, and what's happening is this water is not pooling as much as it would in clay. So it's penetrating and going down pretty quickly, and you're not getting the spread that you would if you had a clay soil. So you want to factor that in terms of your run times and how many gallons per hour emitter even that you want to do. If you're trying to create a good wet spot on the surface, but you're using 1 gallon per hour, what you're going to get in sandy soil is you're going to get a very tiny wet spot, and the water's going to head straight down, and it's not going to spread out and do anything for the roots near the surface. Now, with shrubs and perennials, surfacey roots are important. That's most of the root system. So don't be afraid. Don't think that every plant you ever plant has to be drought resistant. You're going to drive the roots down no matter what. A lot of these plants just don't behave that way. So you've got to ask yourself, what kind of plant am I dealing with, and handle it accordingly. So one of my strategies with irrigation is to put spray irrigation in the front of a bed, and when I have a house like this or a fence or woodwork of some kind, I'll put drip irrigation near the back. These plants, they're probably anywhere from 5 to 7 feet apart, and when they're drip irrigated, the wet spot for each plant is only going to be probably 2 foot in diameter maximum. So that's part of what you want to look at when you're designing the irrigation, is how am I going to irrigate that for the mature size of that root ball. Now here's the same kind of soil, it's the same project, there's the slope back there, but you have a narrower bed, and you see this nice infill in here? So these are the same age plantings, but what you're finding is that the drip irrigation in here can soak the entire width of this bed. That's about a 3.5 foot wide bed, 3.5 feet. And so drip emitters can handle that just fine if you space them out. That way the entire root zone is moist, and the plant roots can do whatever they need to fill in and supply irrigation to that plant.